All right, everybody, welcome to Home Inspections Matter. I am feeling about 95% better. I was pretty sick last week. If anybody didn't know, I had the flu, and I'm pretty confident I had a good case of COVID at the same time. I'm trying to keep that under wraps. So this week, Brian and I have been kind of spitballing a couple ideas on what to talk about. And honestly, Brian shot some ideas and it was kind of funny. We were pretty much almost on point, is exactly how this run. We kind of merged our ideas into this. And I think this is a good episode to talk about the home inspection as itself. We're going to talk about many factors that go into the home inspection. And it's kind of be a little free form as we've been trying to go, but stay close to a structure. These are things that a home buyer should know. And also, these are good things for other inspectors that are watching this to kind of pay attention to. So what do you think, Brian?
Well, hopefully everybody can hear me as we this time as we record. Um, but yeah, I think the biggest part for me, some of the ideas were coming through, seeing how people are prepping their homes for inspection, and thinking about a lot of times the coaching's coming just from the realtor they're working with, and part of what I also hear is the conversations with clients when you're explaining maintenance items or defects you find with the home. They're like, why didn't the person address this? So it's how can you address some of these issues in the home that makes the purchaser feel more comfortable with your purchase. And some of the stuff really ties into what you're being coached from, prepping the house for staging. But these are just simple tips to help get the house ready. Make you the most money possible as you're selling your home.
Some of the things I want to talk about are, key items for inspectors to think about, for home buyers to think about. I lean pretty much to, education on this side. I mean, one of the first things I was going to talk about is like, Brian, what is your process? You kind of lead into yours, and I'll kind of key in some of the stuff with mine. But
Sure.
when people are booking a home inspection, how are they booking it through you?
They can book online for me right now. There's an open calendar that they can go into. Um, you'll see the open times. There's usually 2 time slots or 1 time slot a day, depending on the day of the week. Or if I'm booked, it shows that I'm booked. And then you'll fill out a quick questionnaire. All that information is kept private. So if you hadn't talked to me and you're worried about getting a bunch of emails, it doesn't happen that way. It's one of those, um, hey, put this in. And then what I'm capturing are the big key factors about your home so that I can do put you a quote together or go ahead and get you started in the system as a dashboard. So because you have a client dashboard where your agent's going to get all the information in the reports, we want to make sure we get that started right away. So your inspection agreements, your paying, you can pay online that way. All that happens starting at that point from scheduling online. I am changing that here in the next week or so. I will be using Spectora's calendar, but it's the same thing. It's going to be actually a little bit more streamlined from requesting the appointment to actually getting it uploaded. You can pick all your ancillary services. So if you know that you need a sewer scope and you want a termite inspection, you click all that. And you're going to see all the pricing and everything right up front for booking that inspection.
Yeah, so I know that we both use Spectora. We both love it.
Mm-hmm.
I use something that we talked about before, which again is another software-based system that I use called Next Inspect.
Yeah.
Now I have that embedded onto my website. Now, things that I take into, Brian, you're doing a lot more back office on that when you're starting to calculate your costs and everything. Am I right?
Yeah, so I mean, it's all set up. It's similar to Next Inspect, just because I tried setting that up based on your recommendation a year or so ago. Um, and because of the different factors you use and the different way your back office is set up, Next Inspect is awesome for that. I mean, it's not as robust on the end for what I'm doing, either my current situation or how Spector is set up. But I really had to kind of review my pricing and how my hours are set up to do the inspection and come up how does it work for me,
Yeah.
basically.
See, what I do with mine is I've got mine embedded in there, and there's multiple ways a client can go in there. One of the things I find great about it is um, if there's an available time slot, it shows available. If not, it shows no time slot. But for me, with the realtors that I deal with on a regular basis, they love it for the simple fact of they can go right on there and confirm everything. The multiple factors that I use to go that talk about pricing and inspection. We're looking at things such as age of the house, distance, such as drive time. I try to explain this to people. If your house is 50 miles away, there is an added cost to that. It does cost more for us to get there. And that may sound a little cheap. I mean, it's not ridiculously, stupidly expensive, but I mean, when we're going 50 miles, there's probably a distance charge on that. I have,
Yeah.
some country areas around here, Varnville, Hampton County, Estill. We got some places that are in the middle of nowhere, but there's still houses being sold there, and there's not inspectors living in that area, so they're calling whoever they can get. And for us, we kind of go from Edisto, which is an hour from my house, to Richmond Hill, which is an hour south of my house, to Estill, which is 45 minutes north or west of my house, to Varnville, which is northwest of my house, which is an hour and 10 minutes. So there is some costing that's factored into that. And then we also use age of the home,
Mhm.
crawl space, pool inspections, things like that we all wrap up into that. But those are selections and ancillaries they can pick, like what you do.
Yeah.
Um, the big thing with me is I'm not a big fan of publishing prices onto a website. I think that's kind of for me, a no-no, because you can look at a price on a website, but I'd rather you go in, put your information in, put where it is. Number one, it captures information for me.
Yeah.
It makes me booking the inspection a lot easier. Um, Number two, it's going to give you an accurate price. It's going to give you 100% accuracy, and that price that is generated on my software, which is Next Inspect, which I prefer to use right now. Uh, it generates a live price. And
Yeah.
that's the price that you're going to see when I input it into Spectora, my software. Um, I love Spectora. I just wish that their booking aspect of it that factors in distance and all that, age of the home, all that was there. It's just
Yeah.
not there yet.
They've added distance. Um, I do believe that's one of the profiles I was able to add this time,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't remember it as being robust 2 years ago as it was. I worked with one of the guys, Steven, to just walk through it in a price quote, and it has changed dramatically. Um, so we'll see. I'm going to run it and see what happens. But the one thing that you did mention, I'm curious, how many realtors are booking the inspection time versus the client?
About 50%.
Really? That
Because,
that that just does not happen for me. I have some agents that call me to check availability, and it usually happens for about 3 or 4 inspections, and then they get comfortable with the website.
mhm.
But from there on, it's the client is handling all the inspection and stuff from there.
Well, one of the things is where you are located and where I'm located.
Yeah.
We live in an area that there's a large influx coming into the area.
Hmm.
A lot of the times, the realtor will give three recommendations.
Hmm.
The realtor will be like, "Here's our three preferred inspectors,"
Yep.
and a lot of the times the client will be like, "Well, who do you prefer the most?" And they really don't go into it, but they're like, in no particular order, these are kind of the people we recommend.
Hmm.
Um, and that online availability for scheduling makes it really easy for a realtor. And if they're living in
Hmm.
Pennsylvania, They're like, listen, just get us a home inspector, get it taken care of. And the
Yep.
realtor's got the information right there. It's right off to the races. It takes the phone calls away,
Yeah.
which, kind of takes what I was going to talk about next, which is the price shopping aspect of it.
Hmm.
I do have some people that live out of town that'll call and be like, well, how much is it for a home inspection? And I'll be like, okay, I need the address. I need the age of the home, how many square feet, does it have a crawl space, does it have a pool, all these factors that go into it. And a lot of people will call me and ask me that, and they'll be like, "Listen, I'm call my office manager. She can get everything plugged into the system. We can get you a quote right there." Or I'll call, my mother-in-law, which is my office manager, absolutely awesome. And she'll get me the quote, and I'll call the client back. And a lot of times I'll get like, "Well, you're more expensive than the other person." I'm just like, "Well, there's what are the questions that they asked you? How are
Hmm.
they basing their pricing off of it? Because there's a lot of times where somebody will give them a price. Oh, I'm $450 for 2,000 square feet.
Hmm.
Okay, then they'll do their due diligence, and next thing you know, that $450 is now $600 because that person was just giving a square footage price and wasn't looking at, does it have a crawl space? Is it built in 1965? Is it, all those other factors that go into it, and then that person kind of gets that like, well, you told me it was this price, and you're charging me this. Why is there such a difference?
Hmm.
I'd rather give people the straight up fat price. And when people price shop and they go, well, I've got somebody that'll do it for 350. I'd be like, I completely understand. And they'll want to work with me on price. And I'm like, I know what my time's worth. You know what your time's worth.
Yeah.
I know that if I'm going into a house that's got a crawl space built in the late 50s, early 60s, has a swimming pool, is
Hmm.
2 stories, that it's going to take me a little longer. We're looking a little bit more intensely on things like aluminum wiring, crawl space. I mean, we can go on and on about all the things that we're looking at, but there's reason why there's factors do lead into a little bit of a higher price.
Hmm. Yeah, I can't agree more. I honestly, with dealing with mostly older homes and last job doing all historical buildings, I was kind of like, oh, what does age matter? And it started really showing up in my inspection times doing more newer builds now. Not that the newer builds are necessarily easier, but it's usually it's a different beast. It's like looking at a 70s VW versus if you're a mechanic looking at a newer modern car. There's just some things that you might be able to plug in and read sensors where in an older home you're actually having to like really dig deep into what you're doing. And it just takes it is even me, the guy who loves the historic homes, it's taken me more time. But in my market area, I've come up with a rate based on the equipment I'm using, the time I'm going to spend on it, and oftentimes my travel time's under 15 minutes. So again, it's but I can't go lower than that. It is
Yeah,
meant that the price goes up based on the more services you're there. And people are like, what's the time period? I'm like, the house tells me how long I'm there.
yep,
I shoot for 4 hours as a worst case scenario. But if I'm doing sewer scope and the sewer scope is a half hour plus, and it already took me 3 hours to do the home inspection, and I had to set up radon or read the radon results while I'm there, it's a 4.5 hour, the worst case scenario, 6 hour inspection. And there's no additional charge for that for me. That's just the home. The home ate me up, and
yep.
you're still going to get the level of due diligence that I would do for any customer. So,
Yeah, I mean, the reality of it is, I mean, I have 2 time slots a day, 9:30 and 1:30.
mm-hmm.
And usually the 9:30 inspections, I'm showing up at 9, doing an assessment of where I'm at, getting everything ready to start my inspection.
Yep.
Um, but just because I'm scheduled for 4 hours doesn't mean I'm going to be there. And and that price is based on 3,500 square feet. 3,500 square feet or less, I have booked for 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a solid 4 hour appointment, I'll move my appointment time for the second one to start out for due to travel time.
Yeah.
Which, when booking through, again, this is another reason why I like Next Inspect. When booking through Next Inspect, it tells me, my drive time if I'm going to be late to the next inspection.
Oh, right on.
So it actually lets me know if I'm in any jeopardy when it comes down to that time frame.
I can't remember how the new Spector works just off the top of my head, but I think there's a buffer and it puts I put in time slots so that, once I've put in the amount of time per the inspection, if it needs to, it blocks out and it does it in like half hour increments. So it will
Yep.
push it out for me based on that. But I don't know
Yeah.
if it takes in travel time.
The next inspect takes in travel time, which I really
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But
Awesome.
I tell everybody, I was like, just because I have 4 hours booked doesn't mean I'm going to take 4 hours, and just because I say it might not take me 4 hours doesn't mean it's going to take me 2 hours. I mean, I was
Right.
at an inspection this morning. I talked to you from
Mm-hmm.
1,700 square feet. Looked at it looked at it from a purview of Zillow and the MLS. I looked at it, I was like, oh, I won't be there that long today, but I still had another inspection at
Mm-hmm.
1:30. I was there for all of 3 hours, and again, it's house built in 2002. So we're pushing 22 years old. Didn't really pay attention to location. I know the neighborhood that it was in, and I should have thought about it, but I ran into a lot of things,
Yeah.
which that dictates time. And the big thing is about what to inspect at a home inspection when you've got, as a homeowner, what to inspect is literally going into what we were talking about next, is preparing your home for sale and the home inspection from the home inspector's perspective.
Yeah.
So you go from there, Brian.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that, you know, you're prepping your house for sale, and a lot of times, you're being coached to paint, declutter, and all that makes sense. But oftentimes, we'll find that they've piled everything up in front of the electric panel, which we need to have access to. Um, but really, the small items that I hear that when I'm talking to the client. So I'm doing the summary with the client. I'm walking through everything, and I bring up, some minor defects, roof or gutters, and the question that the buyer always has to me, well, why didn't they do this? And I really don't know the answer, because if I was prepping my home for sale, one thing I'm going to look at is what is the condition of the roof. It's easy to say, the roof is, 15 years old, but as you've gone through the spring season, is there any spring damage? Have you cleaned your gutters out? Are your gutters loose? These are the little nuisance items that we write up that is starting to build uncertainty into the buyer's mind as they're
Mm-hmm.
looking for it. Now, obviously, there can be storms and something just immediately happen. But if it's also, they can't delay making that repair, whether it's a negotiable item or not, that's more work for the buyer to have to do when they take the home. So, um, other parts that they need to be looking at is, um, you know, do you have power to all your outlets? You might not fix that right away, or you do. Maybe it's better to have an electrician out, spend a few hours. They correct some minor issue, they replace outlets, or they correct the GFCI, and it just makes the home more marketable after the inspection, I guess is the way to say it. It's like the home buyer isn't going, they're stressed as they're making the move, you're stressed as you're getting the house ready. But any amount of prep you can do, fixing cracks in walls, simple repairs to minor foundation cracks, the little things that are out there to keep the home watertight. If somebody's reading that I bring up moisture in 7 different parts of the report, they're getting concerned about mold. They're getting concerned
Yep.
about these things. And all the things have just minor solutions. It's just like weekends of home maintenance stuff. Either you do yourself or you hire somebody to do.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what your comfort level is. I'm sure it's the same down in South Carolina for what you're seeing. You're writing up a lot of
Oh,
nuisance items. They're not big deals. They're not defects, but it's like it's not even to make our lives easier. It's really, how does your product show to the client post the inspection?
I'm going to use one example of something that I find so annoying. And I find it annoying because Um, I don't know what it is when you move down south and people don't think about it, but I'm gonna use a bathroom HVAC supply. So people down here take showers. We're not up north. We're down south. I'm from Ohio. When I was a kid, my mom always opened the windows in the house every spring and every fall, let the house air out.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't get closed until it went over 85 degrees. They literally
Right.
stayed open. My parents were literally would squeeze a quarter till the eagle screamed. Um, but things in bathrooms that drive me nuts is I'll go in, I'll inspect a house that's 10 years old, and the bathroom supply vent will be rusty.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and people will immediately think it's the HVAC's got a moisture problem or there's a leak in the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at when I do the report, I obviously call it out because corrosion on the vent. But I know what it's caused from because people don't turn on their bathroom vent fans when they're taking a shower,
Yep.
and they close the door to that bathroom, and that humidity sits in there, and then you have cold air blowing down on it or hot air blowing down on it. Simple maintenance item. Okay, well, you're getting ready to sell your home. You don't want to freak somebody out with that rusted vent. Find out the size of it. Go to Home Depot, buy a new one.
Yeah.
Find out go
25
buy a
bucks.
can of white paint.
Yeah. Yep.
Clean it up. I mean, a lot of these things prepping your home for a sale, and a lot of people nowadays down here, we have a lot of people over the age, and I feel back, 'cause I'm 51 and I'm saying this, but people over the age of 55 or 60 that are moving from up north down south, getting prepared for retirement or are retiring because they're lucky enough to retire at this age, have lived in their house for 30 or 35 years. And they're like, well, our house was wonderful. It was 40
Mm-hmm.
years old and we did so much work and it was great. And I want to be like, when you sell, and they're moving down here, building or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, when the home inspection report comes back and your feelings are hurt because the house hasn't been, you think the house is maintained to your level, but a home inspector comes in and says, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, however many items
Yeah.
that need to be repaired, you're going to be offended. So when that happens and you're buying a house, don't freak out.
Yeah.
Prep the house and realize the person that's selling the house down here doesn't always prep their house either.
No.
Big thing for me, I'm prepping a house. Homeowners. If I could put this out to every homeowner out there, I am to inspect the attic. And down here, most of the HVACs are in an attic and most
Mm-hmm.
hot water heaters in the attic. It does me absolutely no good. And you're costing the person that is buying your home money because I'm going to have to come out and re-inspect if you've decided to take all the clutter in your house and stuff it in your attic. Because if I can't get into the attic,
Yeah.
I am not a moving person. I am not decluttering your attic and possibly putting a box through your ceiling.
Yeah.
And I am not moving a 200-pound box of file paperwork that's 30 years old that should have been shredded to begin with. The things like that really drive home inspectors crazy.
Oh yeah. Yep.
You've got an HVAC in an attic and you walk in and there's boxes stacked
Boxes.
so
Yeah.
tall you can't even see the HVAC.
Yeah. And the other thing, they haven't changed the furnace filter.
Oh God.
It's and it's funny. I like when I see that there's extra furnace filters there because whether it's the right thing to do or not, if there's a dirty one there and there's a clean one sitting right there, I change it just because I can't walk out knowing that it's got a dirty filter in, and just take photos that it's changed. Say new system, this is how it ran. Um, you know, there's usually just having that clean and the furnace filter change. It's a
You're nicer
$5
than me.
repairs.
You're nicer than me. I call it out.
Yeah.
I call it out, and then 99% of the time when they go upstairs and look at the air handler, because I, again, exceed standards or practices.
Mm-hmm.
If I see I've seen some dirty furnace filters down here that are as black as yours in my shirt.
Yeah.
And they're actually being sucked in
To
the
the
return. As soon as I see that, it just makes me take the cover off of the air handler and look inside there at the coils and look for the rust. And look for the dirt and look for the squirrel cage that it has, a quarter-inch worth of dirt on it. Then I called out delay maintenance.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's one of those things. And, my business partner, which I love to death, he's amazing. He is an HVAC geek. And I love him to death because he's got a plumber and he was a journeyman plumber and gas fitter, and he was an installer and a salesperson for HVAC. The guy knows that he's the Cliff Clavin of HVAC.
Yeah, yeah.
He tells me, like, I feel bad calling this out. I'm not really comfortable always calling this out. And I said, listen, you may feel bad, you may feel uncomfortable calling it out, but if it needs to be called out, if we walk into a situation where it's an 8-year-old home and you can tell that they treat their house like garbage, and we can see a filter that's dirty, and we can see that, upstairs, the pan's got rust in it, and the overflow is always and it's filled with water. You have to open it up and look at it. And he
Mhm.
knows that, but it's still one of those things, like, we don't want to call it out. But if you're not prepping your home for us to come and inspect it, you're basically saying, please tell me what I've done wrong with my house.
Yeah, and it's just gonna keep increasing. It's like, if we have a lot of missing stoppers, or stoppers don't
Yep.
actuate in the tubs
Yep.
and stuff, and those can be a pain in the ass, and you're going to overlook that one. That's one that
Yep.
I wish people would pay attention to. But the trap underneath the sink, where the PVC pipes are, those leaking. I do a test in every bathroom where I'm running the sink. I've got the stopper up, I'm filling the sink, and then as all the fixtures are running, shower included, I flush the toilet, and next thing you know, I drop the water in the sink, and I'm looking for it to leak. And it might not leak when you're just running your water, but filling that sink basin up, letting the water flush through, you see all of a sudden, oh, I've got a small leak in the sink.
Yep.
And so it's just, if we don't see it, and I run hot water in the sinks, and I throw my thermal imaging in. I'm looking for the yellow line in my thermal image to be like, okay, where is it leaking? Because oftentimes there's a shadow you can't see. You're trying to move on, but you write up a lot of those sinks leaking, and then it's damaged the sink basin, or the
Yep.
vanity base.
Yep.
So how do you stay on top of that? Is you
I
know
look at things like this, Brian. Like, when we test all of our sinks, the big thing I always say is, when we go into the kitchen, we pull both the stoppers up, we fill the
Mhm.
sinks, we turn the shower on. While that's filling and the shower's running, I'm making sure I'm getting hot water to the shower, and making
Yep.
sure the sinks are filling. I'm I inspect the toilet. I'm looking at the connection of the toilet. I'm flushing the toilet. I'm pulling the top off the toilet. I'm looking at my ceiling. I'm testing my ceiling fan. I'm looking
Hmm.
at everything, testing my GFCIs. I don't pull the stoppers on the sink until they go to the overflow vent,
Okay.
because down here, what I find is, as soon as it hits that overflow vent with the stoppers up, I'd say 20-30% of the time it's leaking due to the overflow.
Okay.
And it's funny, because you'll run this. I've had realtors come and be like, they can't get the sink. There's no leak in the sink. And I'll be like, pull the stoppers and let the sink go to the overflow. And I don't know why it leaks at the overflow, but there's always a leak at the overflow.
Airflow.
And, about 10-20% of the time. And I just, it's something I got in the habit of doing. And, on some of these houses, I just find it. And I don't know why it only happens on the overflow, but it happens on the overflow. The
Yep.
vent overflow at the top.
And once you keep finding something that's happening like that, it becomes a matter of practice every time you
It
do it.
happened 2 or 3 times, and I was just
Yeah.
like, from now on, we're just filling the sinks completely up.
Yep. Yep.
I'm going to give you an example here on preparing for a home inspection. Uh, a previous inspector that worked for me was doing an inspection on a home, and I kind of give him the pass on the fact that, yes, the home was not prepped for an inspection, but at the same time, it's one of the things that grinded my gears about him, because we have a policy for missing something, or not being as detailed about it as possible. We have a 1.5 times reinspection fee refund on what, if we miss something. And if it's catastrophic, obviously we're going to go into it, but we've never
Right.
had a catastrophic error in omission. But there was a small crack in a Corian sink, and in his inspection report, it showed the sink was filled with dirty dishes. But I could see from the pictures of the kitchen sink, due to the fact that we take pictures of the kitchen sink and underneath the kitchen sink when we're
Mhm.
inspecting, for this very reason, that I could see the Corian sink had a fracture in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that, as an inspector, you have to be cognizant
Mm-hmm.
of what you're inspecting, even if the house is not prepared properly
Correctly.
for your inspection.
Absolutely.
With the buyers of the home, you know, I, you know, I fell on the sword and refunded them 1.5 times their fee, apologized, called a repair person to come out and repaired the Corian sink, which they did. But on the other side of it, I apologized to him, but I said, due to the fact that the homeowners didn't have the house properly prepped, my inspector made an error,
Mm-hmm.
but we honor our word and we do the right thing. I mean, we can surmise the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, whatever you want to,
Mm-hmm.
whatever religion you are, you can surmise it all in 3 simple things: tell the truth, be a good person, and do the right thing.
Right.
It's pretty much what I found my business on. And I told him, I was like, I'm going to send somebody over to repair it. I'm going to refund your inspection fee. If there's anything moving forward, let me know. Let's get it fixed. Guess what? They fixed it. The client was happy. The realtor was impressed that we went that far above and beyond. But the whole thing is prepping a house on the seller side has to be done. Now, since that's happened, I have been extremely cognizant and changed my notifications that go out to my realtors in the Spectora system when they get their notifications, client's agent and seller's agent, of how the house has to be prepped. And
Yeah.
if the house isn't prepped, those items will not be inspected. And if we do inspect those items, it's going to be limited inspection.
Yeah.
Because, we can only do so much. We're not movers. We're not your cleaning ladies. We're there to inspect the house. I mean,
Yeah.
every house that I've sold, when they come in, I make sure that everything get in the closets and make sure the bathrooms are all clean and make sure there's no dishes in the sink. Make sure there's no dishes in the dishwasher. Try to make sure that my garage, access to my electrical panel, access to my water heater,
Mm-hmm.
access to all the mechanicals of the garage. Make sure that everything is accessible, because we already have enough things to look at. And again, I'm not a mover. I'm not going to go into your attic and be like, great, well, I got to move 50 boxes to get to your air handler.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm limited on how much of the attic I can inspect.
Yeah.
I had probably about 2 months ago, somebody was buying a house and they booked the inspection. I have everything in my inspection report to the seller and the buyer that the house needs to be prepped properly. We showed up. The garage was completely full.
Cool. Yeah.
Completely full. I would almost say hoarder-like conditions, but it was just boxes. No water heater inspection, no electrical panel inspection. The attic was completely full of boxes.
Yeah.
No HVAC inspection, no attic inspection. And everything was marked as limited inspection, limited inspection, limited inspection, restricted. I had the buyer call me very upset, and I said, did you look at the pictures of the garage? And they said yes. And I was like, please tell me how I was supposed to get to the water heater and electrical panel.
Mm-hmm.
But you could have just moved those boxes. I was like, there is no
Can't touch
way
your
I'm
stuff.
moving 50 boxes.
Well, you can't touch their personal items. It comes down to that.
Yep.
You don't want to be touching anybody's personal items. You want to be cognitive. If they have computers plugged in, are you actually tripping those receptacles? Are you causing damage unnecessarily or accidentally? And that's not what we're there for. If we cause damage, normal operating controls, and something fails, well, that's part of the inspection. But um, when you're moving somebody's stuff and you break their grandmother's fine china because you move that box or you push something to a side, it's a risk that you're unnecessarily taking at the time.
Well, and this is the thing is, that buyer, I said, listen, I have no problem going back out and re-inspecting, but I'm going to have to charge you a re-inspection fee. And, this is something you need to talk about with your realtor.
Mm-hmm.
And the realtor needs to reach back out to the seller's agent and make sure the house is ready.
So I've
And
got a
and I pretty
question
much
for you.
told him,
Okay.
what's that?
Go ahead. No, finish your thought. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I feel for him. I know it's an extra added cost to the person that's buying it, but that client called their buying agent, and the buying agent I do quite a bit of business with, she called me and she was just like, can you waive the reinspection fee? I said, absolutely not. I was like, number one, it was a 2,900 square foot house. And I understand I only spent probably 2 hours and 45 minutes there. I was restricted on some of the major mechanicals, but I still had a lot of work there. I can't waive the inspection fee. I was like, somebody's going to have to pay it, because the reinspection, what people don't realize is, again, that's time out of our day. That's time.
Mhm.
That's me taking time from away from my day from another inspection to fit them in, whether it be
Yeah.
10 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever. Well, that realtor called the sales agent, and the seller's agent called me and completely apologized all over herself
Hmm.
and said, I will pay the reinspection fee. I will make sure the clients have the house ready for inspection.
Right.
This is the part that was painful. I showed back up to do the reinspection. It wasn't ready.
Mm.
I called the seller's agent and I said, you need to get over here with somebody. I can't get into the garage. And the attic, I can get to the air handler, but I can't inspect the attic. They're still not ready. She came over with her husband, and they moved a pathway to the panel and to the water heater. And I was like, I'm not touching it. And I said to her, I was like, I'm not trying to be a pain, but I don't have time to sit here and do this. I was
Yeah.
like, I will go in the attic. I will start on the air handler up in the attic. I can probably get everything from the water heater, but I still can't get around the attic to inspect the insulation, the trusses, the roof
Hmm.
sheeting, any of that on the attic. While I'm up there, if you guys want to come over and clear me a path, that's great. I'm not doing it. And I wasn't trying to be difficult, but like you said, how do I know that there's not 300-year-old antiques in any of those boxes?
Hmm.
How do I know that there's not something in there that if it gets damaged, the seller's going to come after me? That's
Yeah.
not my job.
Yeah. And I haven't forgot my questions, but it's one of the things that the agents are already coaching them on is declutter and clean out your house beforehand. You're going to want, if you're buying a new home, you're going to want your inspector to be able to have access to those areas. And so it's just a good practice to have it ready that way. And to my questions though is, so in Inspectora, do you put the listing agents information in on every report?
I try to ask for it as often as possible. And
Yeah.
lately, I'd say 95% of them are putting it in the Spectora.
Okay.
I'm trying to do my due diligence on showing time and grabbing the listing agent's
Hmm.
information. Um, but partially, if a real estate company, a buying agent, if the closing coordinator, whoever they have booking for their clients,
Right.
I've been trying to coach with the closing coordinators or their office managers that if you have the information of the sales agent, please put it in there, because the notifications that go out will go out to them also to let them know that we are coming. Because a lot of times the seller's agent will be like, oh, I thought it was tomorrow, or I thought it was at 1:30. How many times have you shown up to inspection? Everything's booked. Your sales agent and your client, everything's online, but the seller's agent is kind of clueless
Of
of
what's
what's
going
going
on.
on.
Yeah, yeah, it happens. It happens. I've had one recently where they didn't mark the house pending, so people were still showing up, and people were coming in, showing up with their agent to see the home, and I'm already to inspection. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm inspecting, and some people wanted to turn away, and some people wanted to still be in there while I was inspecting the home. So it's just
Yep.
interesting.
I mean, one of the things that I can say is uh, I've shown up to inspections, and the house will be on what they call delayed listing.
Hmm.
And the delayed listing, the agents in the local area can see it, but it's not listed on the MLS yet. I mean, it's listed on the MLS, but
Hmm.
not publicly listed. It's not on
Right.
Zillow or any of that stuff. And I'll show up and I'll be doing the inspection. I had one happen on Hilton Head like 2 months ago. Like 5 people showed up to see it, and like 3 realtors. and they're all asking like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm inspecting." So what'd you find? And I literally have to look at them and be like, "I can't." I was like, "I don't
Can't talk
work
to
for
you about
you.
it.
I can't talk to you about it." And then I
Yeah.
also have, the thing that gets me is also with sellers. Some will ask, "Well, what did I find?" And I'll be like, "Unfortunately, I can't disclose that to you. Anything that the buyer's agent, the buyer wants to disclose to you, they're going to send through to you."
Right.
And they're like, "Well, how is it on a scale to 1 to 10?" And be like, "Honestly, I can't talk to you about it." I was like, "I do apologize. It's a beautiful home, but I can't talk to you about anything I find."
Yeah.
Um, and it becomes painful in those situations. I mean,
Hmm.
I've had sellers agents ask me that, and I want to look at them and be like, "You do realize that I can't say anything to you, right?"
Yeah.
Um,
Especially when you
and-
have a good relationship with them. It's
yeah.
one of those things that I just had. Well, were they my first? They weren't my first, but they were in the top three first referring agents that I had, and I finally inspected one of their homes. Hired in through a different buyer when they were listed, and it's like at that point I can't talk to them about anything. And the good thing is they're not going to ask me anything. I know this
Yeah.
agent well enough; they're not going to ask me anything. And actually, um, you know, I respect that. It's like I don't want to talk to them about it. It's strictly the client. The client has to tell me I can even talk to their agent.
Mhm.
You know, so
I
uh,
have it in my agreement. And the way I have it in my agreement is that when the report gets published, it has in my agreement that I'm allowed to talk to all parties involved on the buying side. I have that in
yeah,
my agreement, meaning
yeah,
their agent and them. And I
yeah,
make it very clear to them that when I speak with them, that the reason why I'm speaking to your agent is if they call and ask me, how would you, is there any way you can dumb down this verbiage for me? I try to dumb it down for them so that they can explain it to the client.
yeah,
Because they're like, the client's calling and they're freaking out about this. And I was like, it's nothing really to be worried about. It's just a common defect. Two neutrals under the same lug. It's nothing to be worried about. They get an electrician in, loosen the lug, move one neutral down.
yeah. It's a
Um,
simple solution.
yeah, they're like, well, how would I explain it? Just tell them, be like, it's a very simple fix, and it's something that you can, as the agent, it's your decision of whether to ask the seller to have it repaired, or if the client, I tell agents this previously, like, or if the homeowner is planning on doing a remodel on the house, it might be something they want to do afterwards.
Yeah. Yep. Um,
Um,
the one thing about the not prepared house that I've done recently, and I didn't, after I did this the first time, it worked great because, like you said, a good way to look at it is if you're going out to re-inspect, you have 2 appointments a day. If you're allocating it to a re-inspection fee, that inspection is now taking you a full day and not half of the day for you to get it done. So you have to charge for that time based on how it's set up. So I had one, I couldn't get into the attic. The garage was totally filled. The basement had not been cleaned from fecal matter from their dogs. They were having keeping the
you told
dogs
me about
out of
this,
the
yeah.
house. Yeah. I didn't even I didn't even do the sewer scope because I didn't want to bring my sewer equipment into that basement because it was just right by where they were urinating and stuff.
And I
And
think you
then
had an inspection after that too, and that's why you
yeah,
couldn't bring
yeah, you got to go into somebody else's house after that. So though I keep change of clothes and everything that when your truck becomes your mobile office home and changing room and dining room at times too. But it's a forceful letter, and the selling agent was a little put off by it until they saw the photos. And I state these items are not accessible. I am happy to come back and reinspect. I will do it within this time frame to meet expectations of your window, but I need photographs that the work is completed before I will come out at this time to do the reinspection. And especially that was the first home I did it based on not the first, but I did it based on the severity of the home is
yeah.
why I did it that way. And I got into a situation a couple weeks ago where I didn't do that right off the bat, and I was at the house 3 times.
Yep. Oh, I remember you telling me about
And
it.
yeah, and it's just like, what you want is success. For my buyer was not happy about it. That's the biggest part. That's the person who ends up feeling the most of the pain. You know, the agent who was the buyer's agent, she offered to pay my reinspection fee. And it's like, I don't want to charge that client. I don't want to charge anyone except unless it's needed to based on my time.
Yeah.
And that's how it worked out. But you know what? I know once I sent that client the show me photos before I arrive, did I get it? Because I came back and the gas was back on.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to shut down the water heater because it was blowing water all throughout the basement when I showed up through one of the inspections. So I'm like, hey, I
Yep.
shut off the water heater, shut off once they tested, they're like, oh, it's fixed now. But I'm like, how did they test it? If it's
Yeah.
fixed, why is it still have the gas off at the hot water heater? They didn't test receptacles. And sure enough, at reinspection, 50% of the sinks had hot water, and it was a renovation. Not one of the scald valves had been adjusted in any of the new shower fixtures. So all the showers were cold too. So if I'm buying a home, I don't want to take a cold shower.
No.
I don't want to be dismantling my shower to change the scald valve inside of the shower to get you the proper hot water.
Exactly.
Somebody else needs to do that. So
Um, but this goes back to one of the things that are kind of in our talking points of explaining the process to everybody. I mean,
yeah.
I try to explain the process when I show up to an inspection, and I'd say most of the time I'll show up and there'll be a buy. I'd say 70% of the time the buyer or the seller is probably walking out of the house
Yeah.
or still there for an hour or two. Like, I don't have a problem if the seller's there. I know some people do. Doesn't bother me at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's their house. I'm a guest in it.
Yep.
And I always go through, I take a 10 or 15-minute spiel, explain everything to the seller. I always walk in, I say, all right, my name's Jan. I'm the owner of Homegrown Home Inspections. We're here to do an inspection. So what we're going to do is we're going to start on the roof of your house. We're going to work our way down. We're going to work from side to side or all the way around the house, inspect all the mechanicals on every side of the house, including the mechanicals on the exterior of the home. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to head in your garage. I'm going to inspect your garage because I've obviously inspected the garage door already, and I'm going to inspect your eyes. I'm going to look at the non-contact reversal. I'm going to inspect everything in your garage, including your electrical and water heater if it's accessible. Once that's done, I'm going to head into your attic and I'm going to inspect your air handler. I'm going to inspect the attic space itself. Once that's done, my heavy lifting is done. I'm going to come down and inspect all of your kitchen, all of your appliances, do all the mechanical tests on that. Then after that, all the light lifting is there. I'm going to go from room to room, bathroom to bedroom to living room, inspect your outlets, make sure all the windows function properly, the doors, look for any defects. So I kind of walk through that. It's kind of like my canned speech to them.
Yeah.
And one of the things I say at the very end, I say, if there's any areas that I find during this quick purview walkthrough, I will let you know that either you'll need to move the items or have them prepared for me to be able to
Mm-hmm.
inspect. If I can't move them and I have to come out for a reinspect, it will cost one of the parties an additional $150 for a reinspection fee.
Mm-hmm.
I do apologize if that's inconvenient, but the house should be ready for inspection. So please once I get done with this, I'll let you know if there's any areas that are in question that I can't get access to.
Yeah.
I would say in the past 2 months since I've done that, I've had 5 very positive reactions when I explain that to them, where they've been like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to leave my bikes hung up against the electrical panel was one of
Mm-hmm.
them. The other one was, I told my husband 5 times to move the weight bench, which is
Yeah.
in the garage. And they laughed about it. And I said, I'm not going to move 1,000 pounds of weights and a big bench in front of it.
All right.
So, and she was like, my husband will be home in an hour. He'll make sure it moves. And I did have 2 very, very negative reactions, which I looked at them straight up and I said, well, obviously I'm not going to be able to inspect those areas. So they're going to be restricted. So we are going to have to come back out for a reinspection. It will be noted in the report. I got to call the buyer's agent to let them know. and they get very agitated. And it's the whole thing of like, I'm not trying to get agitated with them, but I'm not trying to get them agitated. And I'm not trying to be aggravated with them, but I simply explain to them, I'm like, we've known the home inspection is going to be for the past couple days. There's been information sent out to your agent and to the buyer's agent that the house needs to be prepared. An
Mm-hmm.
error on your behalf does not create an emergency on my behalf. Unfortunately, I have to follow my procedures and protocols. I have other appointments today. So, I will have to put it in as a restriction. Um, Out of all of those, out of the negatives that I've had the seller's agents call and apologize to me for the reaction of the homeowner,
Mm-hmm.
because the seller's agent 99% of the time has had the conversation with the homeowner. It's
Yeah.
just the homeowner really doesn't care.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just one of those, it becomes an obstacle for them. And, you know, again, people are stressed at the moving time, and, why things go up into the attic versus out of the house into a storage bin if you need to declutter. Like your agent would rather you have a storage bin and get everything out of the
Yeah.
house. Um, and explaining that process, the driveway speech, as I think Ian Robertson always calls it, is so important to do for both the seller and
The
your
buyer.
buyer. Yeah. And I have my buyers, I typically ask them to come at the back end of the inspection to give me the first amount of time with the home.
If they can show up.
If it Man, I'm really good with buyers showing up. I'm very lucky with that. And I love it. I love them being part of the inspection. Um, I think part of it is I like seeing people excited about their new home.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I still get off that energy from, back working restaurant jobs, or, like I want to see people excited about their new home.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I
and
mean,
I'm,
you
I'm,
want to
I'm,
see somebody happy.
yeah, and I'm happy as heck to get to go in these places. And, for them to trust me to go in and crawl throughout every part of their home and help advise them on what the condition is, what they're going to have to take care of, and hear their plans. I mean, they're excited. Walls are coming down, things are going up.
Yeah.
It's a fun time.
I mean,
Um,
I would love to bring you down here. I think I've shown you some pictures of the views of some of the houses I
oh
got to
yeah,
inspect down here.
yeah.
I've actually been at a couple of these, and and there'll be beautiful house literally on Hilton Head Beach on a 10th floor, not even a house, a condo,
Mm-hmm.
10th floor, 2,500 square feet, $4.5 million condo, and I'm like, oh my god, this view is amazing. They'll walk in the house and be like, "You have a spare bedroom. If you need a roommate, I can cram my whole family into that tiny bedroom. I'll just
Yeah.
live here for the view."
Yep.
I mean, and you'll see them giggle and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, we've always dreamed of having a house like with a beach view." Or and I'm like, "You got a lot of
Yeah.
money."
Yeah. um, this is one thing I've had come up a few times this year, and I don't um, know if you've come. I'm sure you've come across it. Maybe is on structural engineered repairs. And the one thing, I had a home, in a beautiful part of town that obviously major structural work had been done, and everything across the board looked 100% right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking the big steel columns are added in. They've got, you know, they're tying back and into the hillside. They've just done all these great repairs. In the report, we can't say if it's right. You look at it, you just go 100% if it's right. And I'm like, ask the seller for the engineer reports for the repairs made
Yep.
and that it was signed off on. And I had one agent who was like, I never even thought to ask for that.
Yep.
And it's like, if you're going to have to make structural repairs to your home, that paperwork is gold,
Oh, absolutely.
because you want to know with confidence that your buyer wants to know that repair's there. So if you can't find the paperwork and that engineer's gone out of business or whatever the case may be, it might not be a selling point for you anymore. But if you have that paperwork, that's money. And I was like, if you paid the structural engineer to come out as the purchaser, do not lose the stamped signed paperwork from the engineer that reviewed the work.
So I get it quite a bit in new construction for things that happen in construction, blown gusset plates, truss webbing being
Yeah.
defect, and there's things known as standardized repaired letters and
Mhm.
repair specific letters. A lot of those, when I find a broken truss, so I find a broken gusset plate, I find things like that. It'll say consult with builder, structural engineer repair letter required. So those builders are required to produce those for the town.
Mm-hmm.
When I have homeowners ask me about that, I said, well, the structural engineer letter will be on file with your town, with the local municipality.
Okay.
But also, I also will verify with the builder that the repair has been done per the structural engineer letter. Now, again, a restriction for me is I'm not going to put that letter in the report. It's none of my business. It's not
Right.
required by me.
Right.
But with me doing the inspection, I will verify the inspection's correct. And if the homeowners ask me, I'll be like, that letter should be somewhere in your construction file.
Mm-hmm.
And I let them know that.
Right.
The big reason being is I'm not a structural engineer. I will look at the repair letter. The repair letters usually have a standardized, they literally have a diagram of how they're supposed to repair it, how many nails,
Mm-hmm.
how far away, the gusset needs to be repaired, how they're going to repair it. We'll verify that letter and look at the repair if it's available. If not, I'll ask for it and take a look at it.
Right.
But I tell everybody, like, that's going to be something that's on file with the town if it's new construction.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with rehabbed homes down here, I'm going to be really honest. I call out things for structural engineers constantly. And, at that point, I go in and reinspect the repair, but I'm expecting the buyer's agent, or I would hope that the buyer's agent on that aspect, working on that side, is asking for a copy of receipts, work orders,
Yeah.
and repair forms from said foundation specialist, roof
Yeah.
specialist, whatever.
Yeah. That's got to go with the home at that point, because a it's an area that has a monetary impact on the home, and you
Mhm.
want it documented as and if you're having work done and the tradesman cannot provide you documentation for the work and warranty, and they have the right credentials, find somebody else to do the work.
Yeah.
It's yeah,
I, I had a house I inspected 3 years ago in a county that borders ours, and I'm not going to go into the municipalities because I just don't want to say anything
yeah, no
that
reason
might
to.
might go over wrong. But I had a home that I inspected that was considered a historic home,
Mm-hmm.
and there were some questionable foundation issues
Mm-hmm.
like this. And I inspected the crawl space with our crawl bot because literally it was like maybe 11 inches tall. There's no way I'm getting into that crawl space. I mean, I'm a
Right.
big guy. You're a big guy. The crawl bot got stuck twice. I mean, it was a nightmare. I'm sitting there with electric fishing lines and a hook on it trying to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there was some serious issues with the foundation, and I put it in the report. And the seller asked me like how they had their house. They bought on passion rather than on their brain. They bought on the fact that they really wanted this house
Mm-hmm.
no matter what. And I said it needs to have the foundation evaluated by a professional foundation company. I would say that you need to get a required structural engineer layer that this house is fine. Um, and this person's spouse worked for that municipality, county area, and they're like, "Well, it's a historic home," and they're giving us a hard time to do all this stuff. And I said to him, I was like, "It might not be the right house for you then. The thing is you're bringing two young children into this house. It's a historic home. I understand it, but if it needs to be fixed, it needs to be fixed. You're not doing yourself or the home
Right.
any justice by ignoring it."
Right.
Um, and their agent was, I did my job. I walked away after that. I gave them, their inspection report. They called me, they asked me, I talked to me about it. I told them exactly my professional opinion, not my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you're not doing yourself any justice by not having a structural engineer, but that is up to you. I would suggest a foundation specialist and a structural engineer to come out and look at this home. It's 2 years later and they still haven't repaired it. And the house is starting to see some serious issues.
Yeah.
It was held together by lipstick, Band-Aid, and a hope.
Yeah. Yep. And that's where, going into that monetary decision, you're not going to find a perfect home.
No.
But you can't neglect if that's called out. You take that seriously when you make that. I know this from talking to you. I'm not saying,
Yeah.
is that you take that structural engineer not to just defer liability. It's what the home needs.
Yeah.
It needs that, view to it. We would have it in apartment buildings too. There was an exterior landing that was also the fire escape route.
Yep.
And as we explored with the engineer to get ready to build a scope of work, because we knew it needed some major work, we were finding where they had concreted over like wood that was just patched in as filler. And you're like, what is holding this thing up?
Hope and a prayer.
Yeah, hoping and prayer, like you said. And it's really, did I find it inspecting the building? I found that there was issues across the board. But when the engineer started looking at it, totally different game plan. And they're not needed for every home inspection or every building inspection. But when you get into a more exhaustive repair and they're putting their stamp on it, like an architect puts their stamp on stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it's a legit cost to having that person out there, and it will save you money, or you're going to
100%.
plan the maintenance you need to done. So,
I mean, and it goes back to also like some people can get overwhelmed by the size of the reports, overwhelmed by the details of the reports.
yeah.
And, I tell everybody, it's like my reports, and there's that mixed bag out there. What's too many pictures? What's not enough pictures?
I think you take more photos than I do, if I remember.
I do. I take quite a bit more photos than you do. And I know it. I've slowly been kind of streamlining it. And a lot of the photos that are in my report are photos I've taken that are in the report, and then I break them down to the components. But that's just me. But we're streamlining it. I've got to find a happy medium myself. I personally, it's just a habit that I have so that nobody can ever come back to me and say, you didn't inspect this. And I can be like, no, actually, here's the picture. I did inspect it, because I've had that question multiple times. I'm like, no. Here's the picture of that room that you're saying that this defect's in. And please show me in that picture where that defect is. Oh, it's not there. It's like, obviously it happened after the home inspection.
Yeah.
So, size of reports and the details, homeowners have to pay attention to. I implore everybody, the detailed report, it's going to be big, even if it's, average report, I think you said is about 60 pages for you.
From 45 to 60. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine's usually about 60 to 90.
Yeah.
But I tell everybody, read the report, look through it. Don't just look at, look at the summary report that comes to you. Because I actually publish the digital and I email the PDF report.
Oh, okay.
I do both. I do both on purpose because some people like that old PDF. And with Spectora, it's nice because all the hot links are right there. They can go straight to the defects on the hot links and the regular reports also. But the report may be a little overwhelming for you, but there are details in that report you're going to need. I tell everybody in the new construction homes, I was like, get your serial numbers and get your model numbers for all your HVAC equipment, from the coil to the condenser to the air handler. Get your Renai information, go online, register all that. You get 5 years of parts. Labor's not covered, but 5 years of parts are. Trust me, it could help. Go through that report and then have your list of questions for your inspectors. Don't be afraid to call the inspector. Just realize the inspector's not always going to pick up right when you first call. Leave a message, send an email, text message. The big thing is leave available times to call them. Hey, I know you're really busy. Got a couple questions for the report. I'll be available till 8:30 tonight. And if the inspector can squeeze it in, he'll either call you at before 8:30 at night, or he's going to call you before he leaves to go to that first inspection or on the way to that inspection.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have those questions, an email, text, or voicemail, leave the details of what the questions are so that when the inspector calls you, he's prepared to have the answers of the questions for you.
Yep. I love it when people break down. I have a question about item section 4, line 18. I love it when they call out that they have where it is in the report. And from my photo end, I'm hitting at, it depends on the size of the inspection, 300 to 400 total photos. I started doing like location photos and reference photos based on what I saw in yours. So I've added more and changed how my page breaks are. So I think there's always I don't know if there is too many or if there is too little. I think you got to really be sure that you document what you're seeing in the home, but also having a reference that people can look back and say, oh, yeah, that room was pink and now it's blue.
Yeah.
He could have seen it.
I'm just telling you, I do it just to be litigious.
Yeah.
Like I said before, and I'll keep it brief because we're kind of hitting close to our time, but
yeah.
I had somebody 2 years ago try to claim that I missed a defect on the roof. And I think I told you this story.
Mm-hmm.
I inspected the house. It was like July, maybe August. And we got a late summer storm that caused a microburst. And I did the inspection probably about 2 weeks before this happened. I got an inspection about 60 days after the inspection. And this person's all upset because they've got a leak in their roof and I missed it in the inspection. And I'm like, not a problem. What's the address? How about I'll come out? What time do you get home from work? I'll be there at 5:30, 6 o'clock. I have the inspection report in hand and I have my iPad in hand. So I have a paper report, which is about that thick.
Yeah.
And I have the iPad so that I can give them a hard copy of the report and I have the iPad to go through.
Mm-hmm.
I looked up and they were talking about the roof. First thing it is, looked at the roof and I was like, man, I can't believe I missed something. Go into the attic. I'm like, I don't see a leak. That's new plywood. I start going through the iPad and I'm like, the roof used to be black. It's maroon. There used to be a tree. There was a tree to the right of the house. It's not there anymore. Walked outside and I'm like, sorry, ma'am, can't do anything for you. She's like, what do you mean? And I'm talking to her and I'm kind of looking around the neighborhood and I'm looking at 30 houses and 15 of them have new roofs.
Yeah.
And I thought back on it and while I'm saying, I was like, just give me a couple minutes. I go back and I'm looking at the weather and the dates and I'm thinking wasn't there a tornado or a microburst out here? And sure enough, and I go there, I was like, ma'am, I'm just going to ask you a quick question. In the inspection report on page 37, if you see the picture of the house and you look at the cover page, there's a tree to the right of your garage right there where you're saying the roof's leaking. She goes, yeah. And I go, where'd it go? She was like, oh, we cut it down. I was like, okay. Why is the roof in the report black, but you got a maroon roof?
Yeah.
Well, we had it replaced. It was leaking. And I said, okay. I was like, did you read your inspection agreement? She goes, yeah. And I go, in your inspection agreement, you have to call me first before any repairs are done because I can't verify that I missed anything. She was just like, oh, I didn't read that. And I go, well, I can't do anything. Well, I know you missed something. And I said, okay, ma'am, I'm going to ask you this. And I was like, I'm going to be really honest with you because I'm getting ready to get in my truck and leave. And she goes, yeah. And I go, how come you got 15 houses that are surrounding you with new roofs? And I was like, and I know they're all brand new. And she's like, what do you mean? I was just like, well, if you go to my roof pictures and you look at my drone pictures, I can see your neighbor's houses too. And they're all different color roofs. I go, so I'm going to be really honest with you. While I went back out to my truck to review my report, I also looked back to see when the microburst was out here in Pooler, Georgia. And she just kind of put her head down. I was just like, I'm going to leave now. I was like, nice try. But I was like, honestly, this is a waste of my time. She basically wanted me to pay for her deductible on her roof.
Yeah.
And you get that. People are litigious and they're going to find, I mean, I like to believe that everybody's as honest as the day is long, but There are those people out there that will try
Yeah.
to take advantage of a situation. Those reports and those pictures are legal documents, and they are there. We keep them for a reason. Just like we have them stored on Spectora on the cloud server.
Yeah.
Every report that I have a 4 or 5 terabyte hard drives hooked into my computer. Every FLIR
Quickly
picture goes
backed
into
up.
a
Yep.
terabyte. Every drone picture goes into there. Every report goes into there.
And you
And the
don't
whole
delete them.
and
You
I
never
do
delete
not
out
delete
of
it
it.
ever.
Yep. So if they're looking back, there's no question of why is this photo not in the numeric order of what you have. You're keeping all those photos in line. So, yep.
It's just trying to be as litigious as possible.
All right, sir. Well, I think we covered another aspect of home inspection in this one.
All right, man. I mean, I think we're doing pretty good. I mean, we've been trying to keep it about an hour. We tend to go over a little bit, but I hope everybody's getting something from this. As this goes, I ask everybody, subscribe to the page, click like, whatever. We're not trying to monetize this. We are literally doing this for the home inspector aspect of it and also the buyer side of it. There are not many places out there that actually have on YouTube, Facebook, information for buyers. It's just two guys rambling on about the home inspection industry from two different states.
Love that. And
What's that?
we love it. I mean, why you want an inspector inspecting your home is when they have the passion to just really delve into it and enjoy the conversations of what goes on in your home. So,
And trust me when I say this, people, that Brian and I talk 2, 3, 4 times a week about not only this, but we talk about the inspections we're on. So, we are passionate about what we do. We do lean on each other for information. If I can implore any of you, the big thing to keep in mind is I do not, I will not talk badly about a home inspector for their process or what they do or about who they are. The only thing that I get frustrated with when it comes down to home inspections are people that don't do justice to the industry. There are many great home inspectors out there. There are many people that take this industry very serious.
yeah.
But there are also people out there that will take advantage of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Interview your inspectors, interview them, talk to them, look at their body of work, look at their reviews. Take the time to realize a cheap inspector isn't a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
A good inspector is going to price their time and value their time just like you do. I would hope that everybody values their time more than the average person would. I know what my time's worth. Brian knows what his time's worth. So I implore everybody, take your time, educate yourself, subscribe to the channel, try to keep in touch. We're here for you 100%.
Yep.
All right, folks. Have a good night and look forward to the next episode.
All right. Take care.